Consumer grade lasers weren't very powerful, weren't very accurate, and weren't very safe either. That's just a couple of years ago. Now that's all changed. We have a very precise spot for capturing fine details. They're much faster, but they also have a far larger focus on safety, which is what really caught my attention. This is the Hurricane. This new 55-watt CO2 laser from AtomStack has a steel case, a fire suppression system, and AtomStack also makes this heavy-duty fume extractor to address the #1 issue with lasers, which is the smoke. So let's see what this machine is made of and what levels of detail it can reach. And if you've purchased this machine already and want to know how you can get the most out of it, I'm going to show you the first thing that you should do to get the best engravings and cuts. So stick around. We have lots more interesting content coming up, so if you haven't already subscribed, please make sure that you do that and help this channel get to that 100,000 goal by 2025 as well. This is the AtomStack Hurricane. It is a CO laser, which means it's much more like what you'd find in a small business. Now, I'm a fan of diode lasers and they're also getting more powerful, but there are some materials that diode lasers can't cut because of the wavelengths of light that they use. CO lasers have a wider range of materials that they can engrave and cut. One of the main ones they specialize in is acrylic, specifically clear acrylic, which is something most diode lasers really struggle with. This machine was sent to me by AtomStack to test and review and also provide them some feedback as well. I've worked with them in the past and I've had good experiences with them, and this machine jumped out at me because of the added safety features. This laser works with light burn, but you can also use the AtomStack laser software, which I found was quicker to get up and running. Before we go ahead and test out this machine, I wanted to have a quick look around to see what it is made of. So the majority of this machine seems to be steel. We have a steel side panel, steel honeycomb, steel cover, aluminum back plate, it's pretty thick, aluminum front panel, also pretty thick, and on the inside of the lid is steel as well. Side panel is steel, top cover is steel, and the back panel is steel as well. So this machine ends up being just about 100 pounds or 45 kilograms. So it definitely is up there. It's a two-person job to move this thing around. So what I'd recommend is either having this on a mobile base that's pretty heavy duty, or just having it in a place that you never need to move it. We have some safety features here. So your regular on and off switch. Then you have a key that you can take away if you want to make sure that nobody starts this up. And of course your emergency stop as well. For filling, I just use a small watering can to fill this up to make sure that it's topped up to the right level. And I think they've made a small change to this in that they've made a slot so it's a bit easier to see where the level of the water is. We have an LED status bar. So if it's solid blue, it's finished. If it's blinking blue, it is in progress. If it's a steady yellow, it is paused. And if it is red at all, then there's a fault of some kind or you've hit a limit switch or something like that. Around back, we have a hose leading to just a bucket of water that I have. So that is for the fire suppression system. So if it detects a fire on the inside, it has the ability to use that water to put it out. Also around back, we have an exhaust pipe. So this could be exhausted directly outside. For now, what I've been using is the fume extractor that AtomStack makes. And this thing is completely filled with filters. There are some regular filters up top, then we go into a HEPA filter, and then we go down to a carbon filter, which is pretty large. And the fan inside of here seems to be plenty powerful because there's still, even with all of those filters, quite a bit of air exhausting out the side here. And we have adjustable speeds. And there's a timer here as well if we wanted to turn off after a certain amount of time. I've taken the screws out of this cover. We can have a look inside to see that CO tube. So here is what a 50-watt CO tube looks like. And they have nice flexible silicone hoses leading to this for the water cooling. And with the CO setup, we have a series of mirrors. So we have a mirror here which you can adjust. I'll get back to this a little bit later on. Inside, we have another mirror in here, and again, there's some adjustment. If we take the cover off, We have another mirror here which leads to a lens to make sure that everything is focused properly. And here is some other adjustment. If you're putting a piece in that's very thin or very thick, you can use this adjustment to get the extra height and clearance that you need. This machine is kind of similar to a 3D printer. It has a belt-driven system for X and the Y. It also has a small motor in here. And we have an autofocus button, so you'd place your material directly below here. And it will set the height exactly what it needs to be so that it is focused correctly for that thickness of material. This machine can engrave up to 500 by 300 millimeters as is, but they also make a conveyor belt system that can be attached to this machine as an accessory to get it to 500 by 800 millimeters, so quite a big difference. So let's start with something that I'm used to cutting, which is wood. This is cherry, 4 millimeters thick. This is something that I actually helped to cut down. I dried and I slabbed it up. And it should do a pretty good job with this. I'm going to cut a very precise game token if I can. So I'm just going to put this on here. Any angle is fine. I can head over to the computer, and now you can see on the camera in the very corner what we have, and then we can press trace, and now I have it on my screen, and I can position the game token exactly where I need it. That is the absolute biggest difference with a laser like this. That camera saves a massive amount of time. So what I have here is a cut around the perimeter, and I also have it tabbing it so that it doesn't fall out and kind of move around, because we are going to have the air turned on. And then I have a very precise engraving here as well on the face, and we'll see how this turns out in the cherry. Now cherry probably won't capture as much detail as something that is a little bit more uniform. Close the lid. Okay, it's having trouble focusing through here, so I apologize for that. Just about done. This is about 1.5 minutes to do one of these, and it should come around, do the perimeter twice. It's also going to put the tabs on there as well. Should be it. I have it set to park in the back corner just so that it's out of the way. Perfect. I've got some light up to the side here. Just helps to show off the depth of that cut. So this wasn't anywhere close to full speed, and it wasn't anywhere close to full power as well. So I can go quite a bit deeper than this if I want to. That turned out really well. Doesn't seem to have any trouble cutting through this material. You can see the little remnants of the tabs as well. Nice. Let's do the exact same for some acrylic. This is 3 millimeter thick cast acrylic, and I have never been able to cut clear acrylic before. So we'll do the exact same thing. Load it on, go to camera, place it where we want, and I'm going to leave the settings the exact same as what I had for the cherry and see how that turns out. You can see where that camera really comes in handy because you're able to place that part very close to existing pieces that you've cut. That means that you can use your material way more efficiently than if you didn't have this. Should be just about ready to do the cut. Looks like it was just about all the way through, maybe not quite. Since I didn't quite cut through on the first one, I am doing another one, and I have just added one more pass around the perimeter. That should be able to get all the way through. I'm going to clean this up and we'll have a look. Not too bad for one of my first tries in acrylic. So now we can create our own custom game tokens. And have a look at this. So it did a pretty good job of capturing that detail. This was only about 1.5 minutes to make one of these. I was already pretty happy with how this turned out. I was able to engrave and cut clear acrylic, and then what I did is the mirror image, so the smooth side is on the top, but I decided to take it a little bit further and do this. And I was able to do this by leaving the backing on when I did the engraving. I upped the power level just a little bit, and then I spray painted it and peeled off that backing, and this is what I was left with. I think the red is probably just a tad bit dark, and that, I think, is a pretty cool effect. I wanted to try making some man cave coasters, so this is some white oak, and I've cut these up into disc using the chainsaw, so it's really, really rough. Not exactly consistent in thickness. So I'll place it on the bed. You can bring the head over, and you can press the autofocus button. It'll bring it down. And I'd like this to be pretty deep, so I've upped the power level from the last test that we've done. This one's going to be at 50%. It's still traveling pretty fast though. So I've got this out of the way. Now I can take a snapshot. Okay, let's go ahead and get this started. Turn the fume extractor on. Do the back side as well. So I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I think that the depth and the darkness really looks good. It's very rustic looking, which is exactly what I was going for. I was able to get the date and my logo. These are probably a little bit too dark. Now if you had something that's thicker than this and you still want to do it on this machine, you can. Is it looks like there's not really a lot of height here to work with. What you can do is just adjust this knob up. Gives you a little bit of clearance under here. And then you can remove the honeycomb. And then you have a lot more height to work with, and you can set your part directly on here. Now of course you don't want to be cutting all the way through, so this would be more for engraving alone, but at least it gives you a good amount of working height. Having this in the shop and having the fume extractor connected to it makes a pretty big difference, not to mention the fact that the camera makes placing materials and placing your parts on here super easy. And of course you can see that you can utilize your material really well also. I want to do one more. I'm going to do the lid open, fume extractor turned on high, and I'm going to get out of the room until this is finished. I'm back. Oh, it looks like it cut all the way through. It certainly did. Oh, I just did a little cleaning of all the smudge marks I put all over this, and it is looking pretty good. Now when I first got this machine, it was cutting, but it wasn't cutting like a hot knife through butter, and that's what I was looking for. And the reason for that is a little counterintuitive. Let me show you what I mean. So if you have a little bit of painter's tape, you can see that red dot that's on there. That is not the laser position. So where the red dot comes in handy is you can move this around the bed and make sure that the red dot isn't moving around very much. And if it is, you can use these little adjustment knobs to make sure that it is staying relatively in the same position. What's most important here though is to do a laser test. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so inside the AtomStack software, we have this menu. So we can set the power level to maybe 2%, very, very small. So we'll click fire, then we'll click stop right away. And you can see that mine is quite well centered. If yours is not centered, you can take that back panel off, access the area where the CO tube is, and you can make the little fine adjustments here, and then run that same test again with the tape on it and make sure that it is centered. Once I adjusted the laser to be perfectly centered on the lens, it started to cut and engrave very well even at lower power levels. So the focus with these machines and the mirror alignment is very important. I didn't show a lot of detail on how to do this, but AtomStack has a walkthrough for this as well to show exactly how it's done. There's not a lot to nitpick about this machine. Everything is working pretty well. This front panel probably could be a little bit lower. It would just make getting this in and out a little bit easier. And if you have something that's really large, it would make it sliding it in there a little bit easier as well. I found that when the machine arrived, this side and this distance weren't exactly the same. They were pretty close. So all I did was use the belt skip method, and I adjusted this side while leaving that side the same. They may have their reasons for this, but having a steel cover just means that you're moving a lot more weight at high speed. It might make sense to replace this eventually with an aluminum cover. The only other thing is that the water to cool the CO tube is completely exposed. And it seems to me like there should be a little cap, like a breather cap you'd see on a gas tank, for example. But I don't know enough about these machines to know whether that is intentional or not. I like to use Lightburn. I found Lightburn a little bit more difficult to set up, especially when it came to the camera for this machine. Both work really well. I just am more familiar with Lightburn, so that's the one I chose to use. There are a lot more materials and techniques to cover that I wasn't able to get to in just one video, so if you want to see more with this laser, let me know and I'll make sure to fit them into a follow-up video. I have a 3D printer duct challenge video coming up very soon, and I also want to work on combining 3D printed parts and laser cut parts together for something that's going to be both functional and decorative. That's meant to last outdoors with the potential to save me a lot of money, so keep an eye out for that video within a month. Thanks to AtomStack for sending this machine to test. I've been using the Hurricane for over a month now, and because of the camera placement and the added safety features, it has earned a place in my shop. And now all I need to do is build a nice solid mobile base so that I can move it around. Thank you to each of my patrons for helping to make this channel possible. I will have a link in the description below if you'd like to help support the channel as well. And if you do, please join us on Discord, where we have a growing community of creative and talented people to help solve problems, have great conversations, and come up with new ideas as well. If you want to help support this channel in a different way, I will have some affiliate links down below. These are products that I've tested and I use on a regular basis, so I know they do the job. And if you want to check out this machine from AtomStack, I will have a link down there below as well. I hope you found this video helpful if you are interested in lasers, and we will see you on the next one.